Oregonians or 40% of Oregonians that have graduated from high schools in Oregon. Because obviously we've had very much higher numbers than what we have actually graduated from high schools. Sometimes it's gotten a little better, but I do think there's been a disconnect between, and obviously there are other things that come to play here, the pandemic and all of that, but there still is a disconnect between what it would cost to actually reach those goals and what investment public bodies have been willing to make.
Sure. Well, if I may, Commissioner Devlin, thank you very much for those comments. I was in the work groups. I was not a member, but I was, support for the work group devising the adult attainment goal. And in 2017 and 18, and then observed, there was growing, the enthusiasm generated in the work group continued in different ways in the next couple of years. And when the pandemic hit, many things changed, of course. And the enthusiasm around and discussion of investments to support the goal became, precluded by, urgent issues. And I don't have an answer for you, but by what the investment would be. Of course, it would be different today than it was in 2019 as well. And I think your comment, your question about it is particularly relevant because without such sort of focused attention and investment, it would be harder to imagine a shift.
Make some considerable investment and better results.
Thanks, Cheryl. Another quick question. In visiting the various institutions, and it wasn't just the community colleges, there was a significant shift towards the curriculum being online. And I didn't check to see whether it was synchronous or asynchronous. You did. But it would seem to me that we might see a pattern there as well. And, the adult learner, my guess is looking for a way more flexible way to engage in that learning. And so I'm just trying to find different variables that might help us to make improvement on this issue that I need data. So
we, Chair Rowe, Mr. Heyman, we do collect some data on the, whether courses are offered online or in person. Some of the data vary a little bit. Certainly, it all changed during the pandemic, right? In terms of even the data we collected around it. So some of the trends would be harder to tease out. And we can look at that. We have seen in general the expansion really just universally across all institutions and continue.
One methodological sort of shortcoming of this is that you're not capturing, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not capturing credentials that Oregonians may have learned or may have earned from out of state institutions online. And that is, anecdotally, that appears to be a really quickly growing way, which especially adult Oregonians seeking flexible, short-term, maybe even lower cost options for training or accessing it. So that's not reflected in these numbers.
Chair Rowe and Ben, you're absolutely correct. That is not included here. And we hope to be able to include more of that in the future. Our initial look at some of that is that it is a more relevant option for higher degree credentials and for younger. So that doesn't mean that it's not relevant, certainly. Less relevant than for some of the students coming right out of high school.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, while depressing, it's helpful. It's grateful to have it. And if you see any next steps or anything that we can do proactively to to help drive this a little bit, let us know.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm here next, so I'm staying here. I'm not trying to not leave.
Okay, and the next item is the Public University Educator Equity Plans for everyone except, let's see, SOU isn't in here because it's coming later, correct? Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair Heyman. For the record again, I am Veronica Duchamp, the Director for Academic Policy and Authorization. And today you will hear from my colleague, the Director of Research and Data, Amy Cox, about the upcoming work products out of the Oregon Longitudinal Data Collaborative, particularly phase one of the work, which is an upcoming dashboard about educator hiring and retention. So we'll open up with that presentation, and before I turn it over to Amy, I'll introduce the panel of leaders in the educator preparation programs at three of our institutions, Portland State, Oregon State, and the University of Oregon. Last month, you would have heard from three other institutions. I will introduce them and Amy will do the presentation. So Susan Gardner is the Dean of the College of Education at Oregon State University. Tina Anto Peterman is the interim dean and professor in the College of Education at Portland State. And Amanda Sugimoto is the associate dean for academic affairs, College of Education, also at Portland State. And from the University of Oregon, we have Laura Lee McIntyre, who's the dean, and Castle McIntosh, Knight professor in the College of Education, and Deanna Carizales Engelman, who's the assistant dean for administration, equity, and inclusion in the College of Education. They will share brief highlights on the university's work to implement the educator equity plans, the progress or lack of progress since you last heard from them, their last plans in 2022, and the focus goal that they would have selected for the 24-26 plan. As you would have heard last month on May 9th, the public education programs have been supported by a community of practice that is focused on 4 areas: partnerships with school districts, culturally sustaining candidate experiences, implementing state and national accreditation standards, and strengthening the evidence-based use for goal setting and continuous improvement. The 5 plans from the public universities before you today meet the minimum requirements in these 4 areas, and staff recommend these plans for approval today. Note that due to staff and leadership changes at Southern Oregon University, the plan revision will occur later and will come to the commission for approval at your August commission meeting. And we have budgeted time at the end of the presentations. So thank you. Amy will go on, we'll get the presentations, and perhaps we can entertain questions at the end of the presentations. Thank you. Over to you, Amy.
Thanks, Veronica. Good afternoon again, Chair Rowe and Vice Chair Heyman, members of the commission. My name is Amy Cox. I'm the Director of the Office of Research and Data at the HECC, and I am here, as Veronica said, to describe 2 upcoming products that will be coming out later this summer from the Oregon Longitudinal Data Collaborative. The OLDC, I'm not going to keep saying the whole thing, is an interagency program that is housed in the Office of Research and Data at the HECC. The OLDC is a small program that links data from the Department of Education, the HECC, the Employment Department, the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, and more. The director of the OLDC, Ben Tate, recently stepped into a different position in the agency, thankfully still in the agency. And so I have the honor of being in front of you today to describe these 2 upcoming reports. I'm going to share screen just to help you follow along. The first of these reports are coming out, as I said, later this summer, are two things relevant to the educator preparation programs and K-12 teachers more generally. They are not the educator equity plans that Veronica and her colleagues will be describing, but they are related to, the hiring and retention and supply of K-12 teachers in the state. The first is a study that focuses on the supply of and the demand for Oregon educators. It compares Oregon to other states on education graduates, the number of graduates, of course, per capita, student teacher ratios and teacher salaries. And it compares different regions of Oregon on numbers of students moving through education programs, educator preparation programs, and into school district employment, student teacher ratios, projections of teacher hiring, and teacher salaries. So it allows for assessment of how Oregon is positioned compared to other states in these questions around teacher shortage, and how different parts of the state are positioned around these questions of teacher shortage. The other product is a dashboard. As Veronica noted, phase one of an interactive dashboard that shows the hiring and retention of newly licensed teachers in Oregon who were prepared by Oregon Educator prep programs, both those at the public universities and those at private institutions. Later phases of the dashboard will link the data that will link these data to not only individual preparation programs to be able to be disaggregated that way, but also to students' education prior to getting a license. Did they come from an Oregon high school? What region did they come from? That kind of thing. This is a screenshot of the dashboard. I'm not going to give you a demo today, but give you a preview. It brings together 4 very disconnected sources of data to show this part of a teacher pathway. The data comes from Oregon's Educator Prep programs, the Teacher Standards and Practices Commission, and the Oregon Department of Education. It begins with the number of new graduates who are licensed to become teachers, then looks at what percentage of those newly licensed graduates actually become employed in public K-12 schools, and how many become employed the first year after their graduation, the second year after, the third year after, and so on. And then how long they stay in that employment, how many continue to be employed 3 years later, 4 years later, 5 years later. So what's the retention? And it also shows the gender and the racial ethnic distribution or breakdown of the teachers that were newly hired and those who have continued to be employed. In and of itself, this dashboard will show a statewide view of some of the points in the pathway of being a teacher that we don't have visibility into as a state, allowing to see, well, who's being retained and for how long, who's being employed and for and when. It compiles data from many years and individual years, of course, can be isolated in tracking, in working on the dashboard. With that, I'm going to turn back to Veronica.
Thank you. And although they are behind me, I will invite Susan Gardner, the Dean from Oregon State University, if you would like to lead off with your presentation, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the time today. And Amy, I'm really excited about that data dashboard. So thank you for sharing that. I think all of us in the EPPs in the state are going to find that really helpful. So just very briefly, an overview of our plan, and I believe you have the fuller plans for your access. Here at Oregon State University, as the research land grant institution, you can go to the next slide. We have been really excited to continue our growth in terms of meeting the goals and meeting the needs of the state in terms of our racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse students. So knowing that within a given year these change, but 40%, we are currently at 31%. So this is, tremendous growth since we began several plans ago, back with the initial mandate from the state and the legislation accompanying it. So really a piece that we identified in our previous plan emanating from that previous plan, I should say, is then to focus on retention. And one of the pieces that came out of the learning communities and the professional discussions that came out of the last plan was a specific goal around improving the learning environment for these racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse students. Next slide. So here at OSU, our motto around many of these equity-minded initiatives is that we have work to do. We know that while we always are trying to make progress, this is a journey and not a destination, and that we continue to learn, we continue to improve. And that's really kind of the locus or the heart or the soul of what we're trying to do here in our next Educator Equity Plan. Next slide. So the focus of our plan around this idea of retaining the students we have is to re-envision entirely our teacher education curriculum. We have at the current moment 6 different pathways to teacher education, preliminary licensure in the state of Oregon and beyond. And one of the things that we have identified both from data from our graduates, current students, alumni, and stakeholders in the schools is, how we really think more holistically about these needs. So first, beginning with course and program redevelopment across all of these programs, we will be embedding, we've already started this work, culturally sustaining practices into all of our courses, into the curriculum, and then to also the co-curriculum. So once we have started to do that, obviously we need to have our faculty be learning about these tenets and these concepts as well. This also has to touch then our cooperating teacher and our supervisors who are out in the schools with our student teachers and our teacher candidates. And then the other piece that we've been working really hard on over the past year is creating our own version of what had been previously the EdTPA. We are doing our own teacher performance assessment that we also are embedding these culturally sustaining practices into. So, you can read a little bit more fully about how that will be embedded, but this is an overview of the work we've done. I think just to wrap up, and this I believe is my last slide, is that, we have appreciated the more honed focus on a specific goal for this time around. At least from my perspective, being here now in Oregon for 3 years and seeing, several of the plans now conclude and continue, is that having a much broader focus was a lot harder for us to really make sure we were diving in and making a difference. So we appreciate the more specific goal. We look forward to being able to utilize the very generous resources from the taxpayers to continue work on this goal for the larger state. And with that, I will conclude. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if the presenters from Portland State, if you could go next, that would be great.
Oh, you're muted.
These are Oregon slides. I don't know if you want to go from University of Oregon, but we're happy to go next. I thought you said Portland State.
We can go with University of Oregon if that's how the slides are, Guthrie.
No, let me bring up the PSU ones. Apologies.
Sorry.
Hi. I'll wait while those are being brought up. Wonderful. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Tina Peterman. I'm the interim dean of education here at Portland State University, and Amanda Sugimoto is here with me. And I'm not sure she's been promoted to panelist, but she's here as well. There she is. Great, and is a big part of this work. So thank you. So we've been engaged with this work since its inception here at Portland State and the College of Education. And we've had 3 primary goals, which are aligned with the goals of the Educator Equity Plan, recruitment and retention of diverse and initial educator candidates. We also have diverse administrators, and we've been looking at our assessment and curriculum. Next slide. Thank you. So our goal and progress we've made around recruitment and retention of diverse initial candidates, we've had a drop in applications here. So we had a modest drop in underrepresented minorities. But the number of students from the social group across these programs has been stable. Our retention, we also really struggled during the pandemic years, from 85% to 63%. And that's reflected in our goal for what we're going to be working on for the next 2 years. So we largely met some of these expectations, but we fell short of projected outcomes. Next slide. We've made more progress in the retention of diverse administrators. Part of this work is aligned with the Wallace project we have with Portland Public Schools and Lewis and Clark College of Education. So the number of students from our underrepresented groups increased from 19 to 31% in this area. And we also added a BIPOC faculty member who really focuses on culturally responsive curriculum. And then some of the work that we're going to be doing in the next 2 years has already been begun with the Wallace project. So we're really excited about the promoting principles of color work that we're doing with that project. And the next slide. Our other goal for the prior biennium was assessment of our curriculum. This is a real strength of ours. We've embedded culturally responsive curriculum for many years in the College of Education. We have an equity committee of faculty and staff who've done this work. It aligns very well with the mission of Portland State University. It aligns well with our overall student population and our community. We have a new elementary education program that we're launching that's focused on anti-racism, anti-bias work at its core. So this has been something I think we've really excelled in. We have an annual data review day every fall that all the faculty get together and they look at the data from the last year. It's kind of, I affectionately call it study hall. We bring together, we feed people breakfast and lunch, and they just sort of work in small groups within their programs and look at data, talk about program improvement, and actually identify how they're going to use the data and improve it. We also have an ongoing assessment committee and then program and policy committee. So all of this work is I like to think of it as pretty structural in the College of Ed. It's embedded, regular and systematic. So the next slide. Our goal for this next plan is to focus on adding mentoring across our programs to increase a sense of belonging and success of racially and linguistically diverse teachers, administrators, and school counselor candidates. We really want to address this retention issue. Recruitment is difficult, but when we recruit folks, we need to keep them and we need to see them enter into the field and do the good work that we need them to do. That is the mission of this project. So in order to accomplish this, we have three strategies. The first is to examine all of our existing mentoring practices in the College of Education, and we do have many that are occurring, so this didn't come out of the blue. We had some things we were doing that we want to strengthen and focus in different ways and add some resources towards. We want to establish these mentoring models for teacher preparation is the area we don't really have as much, so that's where we're going to be focusing. We do have something in the administrator programs, and counseling has had a peer mentoring program for a long time, and their retention rates are excellent. You'll see in our report if you were to look at that. And then what we'd like to do is then pilot the mentoring model with teacher preparation, counseling, and administration. We're going to be working with the faculty to see that this occurs in an appropriate way for each program. And then the last slide, I believe we were asked to just share our experiences with drafting this plan and any support we may need. And I will just share that this plan is time intensive. It takes, in a large college of education like ours with many, many programs, 18 initial licensure programs, it takes a lot of effort to collaborate and produce this plan. And oftentimes it feels distracting from actually doing the work. Requires lots of meetings and then lots of time just to produce the final plan. So I do want to share that. And I think the things that the state could do to support us are to align this work more holistically with school districts. That's who's hiring our students. That's where we want them to stay and work on retaining them in the field. So $150,000 per biennium just simply isn't enough. We had a 7% budget cut this year. Every year we've had that. That's just cost of doing business. That keeps our current service levels, not to mention additional cuts at Portland State. So this is hard work. I wish we were moving the needle more. I'm hopeful for our plan and the work that we'll do, but I want to just share that realistic perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the suggestions.
Oregon State.
So this is the U of O. This is I'm Laura Lee McIntyre, and I'm the Dean of our College of Education. And I'm here today with my Assistant Dean for Administration and Equity Inclusion, Deanna Carrizales Engelman, and she's going to share the 5 minutes with me. I just want to say thank you to our educator partners in the state, and I appreciate Tina's comments and Susan's comments. This is very hard work. It's important, and I appreciate the collaboration and coordination as we pursue common goals, which is diversifying our educator pathway. So thank you for that. Next slide. Actually, we can skip through. Perfect. In our College of Education, we have many programs. You can go to the next slide. We have many programs, and what we have chosen to do with this particular funding is really focus on our 3 educator preparation programs. So within our College of Education, we prepare school psychologists and counseling psychologists and speech and language pathologists and administrators and so on. And we've really zeroed in on 3 programs. So our special education K-12 program and our early intervention program, our general education program, which prepares both elementary and secondary teachers, and then our music education, which is in collaboration with our colleagues in the School of Music and Dance. We'll go to the next slide. We have a lot of slides, so we'll try to be quick. I want to sort of put this plan and our goals within the context of kind of our day-to-day work, because as Tina, sort of courageously said, the amount of funding that we receive to do this work is a drop in the bucket, is so important, and the infusion of resources is so important, but it's got to be within the context of our day-to-day work in order to achieve maximal effectiveness. And so I want to paint a picture of some of the day-to-day work that is already in place, and then how the monies that are infused from the HECC enhance these day-to-day activities. So for example, we're very intentional with our College of Education educator prep programs to intentionally select activities and teachings that promote justice, inclusion, diversity, and belonging within our college. And a few examples include our ESOL endorsement that all of our general educator teacher candidates receive as part of their UO Teach program. We also focus on tribal history, shared history, ethnic studies, and social emotional learning embedded throughout our educator prep programs. We have our SAPSIQUAPA Indigenous Educator Program, which prepares Indigenous educators from the 9 federal tribes of Oregon and outside of Oregon as well to become educators in their tribes within Oregon and beyond. Our music educator prep program includes both verbal and nonverbal education, creativity, and the arts. And then, of course, our special education and early intervention programs prepare educators to draw on inclusive teaching practices that promote equitable outcomes for learners with disabilities. So this is the day-to-day context of our educator prep programs. Let's move to the next slide and look at some data. For the last 7 years, since we've been involved in this work, our College of Education at the University of Oregon has ranged from 25 to now we're close to 35% students of color or ethnically diverse students from Hispanic or Latinx backgrounds. In addition to this, we have approximately 1/3 of our students in our College of Education educator prep programs identifying as first-generation students. So next slide, I'm going to pass it to Deanna Carrizales-Engelman, who will talk specifically about our plan for the 2023-25 biennium.
Thank you, Laura Lee. Yes, I'm happy to go to the next slide. I can make this really quick. And we realize it's 24-26 biennium that we're in.
Oh, that's right.
So the four areas that we are focusing on with the funding are cohesive learning institutes. We're focusing some funding inside of our programs for some really specific course correction. We're providing professional development for our faculty and the supervisors who oversee our students in their placements, and we are hosting a teacher recognition and partnership event. On the next slide, so this is our focus area. So I talked about 4 buckets. I know we don't have much time. The focus area are these cohesive learning institutes. And the intent of these institutes are to bring together this village that Tina, Susan, Laura Lee, and myself are all very well aware of, this village of individuals who support our students, the faculty who teach them in their classes, the cooperating professionals who open their classrooms every day to let our students in to learn in real time, the supervisors who oversee what's happening in those classrooms and provide feedback to the students, and then the sort of community that wraps around all of those, the administrators and so on. These cohesive learning institutes bring all of those individuals together into a single space to learn something that is relevant across all of those spaces. And so this year, in terms of what Tina shared, in terms of all of those conversations that have happened across all of our programs, the decision that we made to focus on for this year was social emotional learning in order to support something that has recently come in. It's coming through legislation, so all of our new and recent students may not have yet had it fully embedded into the programs. Our recent teachers in the field may not yet have fully engaged through that in their teaching programs. So this is an opportunity to do a deep dive into that experience. And so this year we are focusing on social emotional learning. In future years, it may be tribal history, shared history, or other of those culturally sustaining legislations that are coming in. On the next slide, it just goes into the remaining areas. I just don't know if Veronica, if I have time, I'm happy to share that some of the remaining funding is going to, and this is one that really is important to us as well, in terms of speaking to all of the village that I just mentioned. This now goes the opposite direction and goes to each of those 3 programs that Laura Lee mentioned and gives them funding to focus on the students in that cohort in that moment, so that those students via focus group, via focus study can say, here's what we think we need. We're in the classrooms in Oregon schools, and we're in your classrooms in the university, and here's what's missing for us. Please use this funding to bring that in so that we can expand our learning and be ready for the classrooms. I will skip the last 2 slides in favor of just kind of sharing that what we have found that would be helpful, that we were kind of attempting to model with the Cohesive Learning Institutes, is the sense of sort of teacher induction, that moment, that repair that happens after the students, the new novice teachers have stepped out of our spaces and are now in their new spaces, that experience, that shared hand-holding between learning and experiencing and doing is what we're trying to achieve with the Cohesive Learning Institutes. We're very happy to have had the opportunity to present here today, and there's much more presented in our report that I know you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for any of the presenters? And in your packet, of course, you also have the reports for Eastern, Western, and Western. Right? And it does show a lot of work that goes into it. So thank you for doing this. And I assume we continue to work with them to make sure we're only gathering information we really need and simplifying that process where it's possible. Commissioner Devlin.
I don't identify who this is, but I have a niece who's a principal in the Salem Kaiser School District. And she's having, I believe, lay off some personnel this year. Is what's happening in school districts having an impact on enrollment and also potentially having an impact on placement of your teachers who are qualified?
Who's going to take that? You're all nodding. Everyone on the screen is nodding.
I mean, I think any one of us could take it. Institutions of higher education do not exist in our own little ecosystem. We are deeply connected to the communities that we serve and partner with. And so what happens when school districts lay off personnel or have budget cuts, or, certainly COVID is a great example of, just the challenges of providing quality instruction to students in a remote environment and all of the health impacts on our workforce. I mean, it does affect. Sometimes it has immediate effects in terms of placing students for our field experiences. Sometimes it has less direct impacts just in terms of the lack of, sort of optimism for education, and that may affect students in those districts choosing careers in education. I mean, it absolutely has an impact, and sometimes it's difficult to quantify, but we are inextricably linked, as we should be. And so I think we also, what's happening in secondary ed also affects, our ability to recruit students to come into college, regardless of whether they choose a teacher candidate or education career. We've been talking about the enrollment cliff in higher education. We see the numbers of students in our K-12 declining, and that will certainly affect college. That's going to affect community college. It will affect our universities, and inevitably it will affect our ability to produce the numbers of educators that are necessary to support quality education in the state.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Commissioners, this is an action item, so we need to approve these reports. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Your reports are accepted and appreciated.
Chair Rowe, if I could, before they take off again, thanks to the presenters from the Colleges of Education. I also want to note Susan Gardner from OSU has been serving as co-chair of the Governor's Early Learning Literacy Council. And in that role has been working, I'm going to say feverishly, Susan, although you always look very calm, but it's been a tremendous amount of work to bring forward over the last 10 months or so, a set of recommendations for revisions to educator preparation program standards that focus those programs and how they teach, train, prepare teachers to teach literacy. And she's been doing a terrific job. So she and a colleague at Eastern Oregon University, Rhonda Fritz, who you've I think has been before the commission, just doing a terrific job leading that for the governor and her staff. So you see Susan, I'm also serving on that commission, but Susan.
Thank you.
And Chair Rowe, if I might just add, I would like to recognize Erin Weeks, who is in my office and has worked very closely with staff from TSBC and ODE in reviewing and giving feedback to these reports. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge.
No, I'm glad you did. If you were getting agreement from the deans. So thank you all very much. There's no other business to come before the commission. We're adjourned.
Not bad.